Hey, what's up YouTube? This is Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front brake pads and also your front brake rotor on a 2015 GMC Yukon XL. This is the four-wheel drive model. Okay, the first thing I like to do before pulling off this caliper is push this caliper piston or the caliper pistons back into the caliper just a little bit so that this will easily come off. And the easiest way I found to do that is with a screwdriver. You've got these two little access ports or windows, and you just pull that slightly towards you like so. Now, it's not necessary to completely compress the caliper pistons. Sometimes you're not able to do that with this method, so sometimes you'll need to use a C-clamp or something else once you have the caliper off to completely press those in. Now, before we really push that caliper piston back in or very far, you want to just double check your master cylinder fluid level here. A lot of times you can even just pull the cap off. It is vented, so you don't necessarily have to take it off, but just to kind of look in there and make sure that you're not going to overflow that brake fluid by compressing the caliper piston. We've got plenty of room still inside the reservoir here, so we're not going to cause a mess just by pushing these caliper pistons back in. Now you've got your two caliper slide pin bolts here, the top and bottom, and on this car these are a 19 millimeter, so we can go ahead and just break those loose. And then I'm just going to cheat here and spin them off the rest of the way with this Milwaukee ratchet. That's what those look like. We'll set those aside. And then on our caliper, we can just carefully position that up here on the upper control arm. You see, I've just got it sitting up here on the upper control arm. Just make sure that it's not going to fall. You know, sometimes I'll use a hanger or a zip tie, but this one looks like it's pretty solid up here. And make sure that you don't pinch this ABS line, or just make sure it's not going to fall and pull on that brake line. Okay, then we can pull out the old pads. And this one's not completely worn down, but I'm going to try to see if I can show you that it's got a lot of cracks all the way through the surface of the pad material. Now, same with that inboard pad. You can see it's either gotten really hot or it's just this particular manufacturer, but those are cracked pretty well. Not quite worn down to that little noisemaker here, but because of the condition of the pad, we're going to go ahead and change them. And one thing to note, the inboard pad has got this straight edge where the outboard pad is curved. So these are different. Just take note of that. Now, to take off this caliper support bracket, we need to remove these two bolts right here, and those are an 18 millimeter. And again, just to save time, just going to zip them off here. This is one of my new favorite tools here, the Milwaukee Fuel. It's the M12 brushless version. This is the 3/8 drive extended reach ratchet. I'll get a link in the description to this tool, but it's quickly becoming my new favorite tool. When doing that, I just like to keep one hand on this support bracket so it doesn't drop. That's what that bolt looks like. We're going to reuse those. You can see that we've got almost a mirror glaze here, so this is, you know, we would either turn this or replace it, and this owner's opted to just replace it. The rotor is held in place by this little bolt down here. It's a T30 Torx Bit, and I like to give it a tap or two with the hammer, almost like an impact screwdriver, just to loosen that up. A lot of times those will just get stuck on there really good and locked in place. I've also got this little mini impact which will help take them off, but let's take a look here. That got it. We'll set that aside. And sometimes these rotors are stuck on as well, but this one is not, which is nice. And before we put the new rotor on, you see we've got a little bit of rust build up on the hub here, so I'm just going to hit that with a wire brush. The main thing is just to make sure that the new rotor will sit flush up against the hub here. Now, before I put the new rotor on, I'm just going to wipe it down with some of this CRC brake cleaner. I'm just going to do the inside edge first. And then when you put it on, you want to make sure that one of these tapered holes, this has got 3, make sure that one of them lines up with the threaded hole there on the hub so we can put this Torx Bit bolt back in. There we go. And then I'm going to wipe down the outside as well. Just gets all that packing oil or grease off of the rotor. Now our new brake pads also came with these new pad retainer clips or shims, so we're going to swap those out, and that's a little bit easier to do before we put this brake caliper bracket back on the vehicle. So we'll just pull these out. I'm also going to hit this surface with a wire brush just to make sure that that's clean, so that the new clips will sit flush in there. Alright, and then we can snap the new ones into place here. Now these are a pretty tight fit. Helps to just tap them in place with a little hammer, and then just make sure that they're fully seated there. Otherwise the pads won't really fit in there, or you'll have a hard time putting the new pads in. We'll just line those up and give them a little tap, and that seems to lock them in place. That looks good. We're also going to pull out the slide pins and clean and re-grease them. You can see they get to be pretty dirty. We'll just wipe off the old grease. When they're really dirty like that, sometimes I'll put them in again, pick up a little bit more grease inside this little pocket where the slide pins go. Clean out as much as we can till they're nice and clean. And then I'm going to put some of this brake grease on here. This is Sil Glide. Just a little dab or two is really all you need. Just smear that around on the slide pin and then just put it back in. Same with the other one. You can see how dirty that is. Just get it all cleaned off. Same thing, just try to get a little bit more excess out of that little pocket where the slide pin goes, and that'll make it so it doesn't bind up. And just kind of spin that grease on there and put it back in. Sometimes if you get excess grease or air in there, you might have to push on these a little bit more and pull on the boot, which essentially will burp any air in there out of that little pocket, but that feels like they're good. Okay, so our caliper support bracket is ready to go back on. And grab the bolts and get them started by hand. And we'll zip those on real quick. Now we need to torque these to 129 foot-pounds. Remember, this one with the flat edge is the one that goes on the inside or the inboard pad. But before we put it in, we're going to put a little bit more of this Sil Glide brake grease on it. Just a couple dabs is really all that you need, and just smooth those onto the back of the shim here. And then I like to also put a little bit at the ends. That allows the pad to move back and forth on this little pad retainer, or these little clips right here. Now same with the outside pad. Just a little bit on the back, and then some at the ends here as well. Make sure you don't get any grease or anything on the pad surface. If you do, make sure you wipe it off. And just press those into place. Okay, now before we can put the caliper back on, looks like we just need to press these caliper pistons back in a little bit more. So I've just carefully got it propped up here on top of the caliper support bracket. I'm just throwing in an old brake pad here, and then just going to use a C-clamp. You can see I got a C-clamp on the outside of the caliper, and just pressing this old pad up against the piston to press it in place. There is a caliper piston compression tool that I usually use. I just didn't bring it with me today. And I'm just going to alternate over here to the other side as well. until that's completely bottomed out. Alright, and then we can reposition our caliper over the new pads. You may have to pull on the slide pins just a little bit to get that to drop over, and then we can put the little slide pin caliper bolts back in place. And we'll just get those snugged down with the ratchet here, and then we need to torque those to 80 foot-pounds. Sometimes the slide pin itself will spin while you're trying to do this, and you may need to put a thin open-end wrench on the slide pin. But it looks like we were able to do it without it moving. And you're done. Just remember to torque everything to spec, and before you head out on the road, go ahead and step on the brake pedal a few times, which will slowly push that caliper piston or the caliper pistons back out, pressing the brake pads up against the rotor where they need to be. It's a good idea to not press the brake pedal all the way to the floor. Sometimes that can gum up the master cylinder if there's any debris stuck inside there. And then it can cause your seals to go bad. Just a couple light presses on the brake pedal until you feel that it's firm, and then go ahead and double check your reservoir level on the master cylinder as well before you head out. Hope you like the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind, and go ahead and ding the little bell next to the subscribe button so you get notifications. That does help me out. I'll go ahead and put a link in the description where you can pick up some of the tools and parts that I used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.